AITA for letting my wife believe I was broke until the divorce lawyers called. My name is Gabe Navarro. I am 43 years old. I live in the Harlandale neighborhood in San Antonio, Texas, in a two-story house my grandfather bought in 1974. It smells of fresh paint, frying oil, and the orange trees in the backyard, which never grow the prettiest oranges but produce the sweetest I have ever tasted. My trade, the one everyone knows, is running a taco truck, marinated pork from the spit, steak, tripe, and head on Sundays. My stand is called Gabe's Tacos. Located on a busy commercial strip in the south side between an auto parts store and a nail salon called Glam Nails. The people in the neighborhood have known me since I was 19. When I started with a borrowed cart and 3 kilos of meat that Mr. Bob Sanchez, the butcher from the local market, gave me on credit. Marissa Navarro came into my life on a Tuesday in October 2012. No, not at the taco truck. At a gas station on I-35 to Austin at 11 p.m. She had a gray Toyota Camry with a flat tire and a face that suggested the world owed her an apology. I was coming back from delivering a taco order for a party in New Braunfels and stopped because I had tools in my pickup. I changed her tire without saying a word. She watched me the whole time, her arms crossed, as if assessing whether I knew what I was doing. When I finished, she asked how much she owed me. Nothing, I said, wiping my hands on a rag that smelled of cilantro because I had been chopping it half an hour earlier. She laughed. Not at me, but at the situation, the smell of the rag. The fact that a guy in an apron was changing her tire at a highway gas station at 11 at night. She gave me her number. I did not ask for anything. She told me she worked in human resources at a manufacturing plant in the Southeast Industrial Park. That she was from Laredo but had been in the San Antonio area for 8 years. That she liked her black coffee without sugar, and that she hated unpunctual people. We went out 4 times before she knew where I worked. The 5th date was at my taco truck. She showed up in heels to a taco truck in Harlandale. The neighbors stared at her as if a plane had landed on the sidewalk. She ordered 3 marinated pork tacos with everything, sat on a plastic stool, and stained her white blouse with green salsa. She did not care. I liked her for that. We got married in June 2014. A simple wedding in my home's backyard, under the orange trees. Slow-cooked stew from my buddy Al Fuentes. Bud Light beer in blue coolers. A local band that played out of tune, but with passion. 40 people attended. Marissa's mother came from Laredo and watched me all night like someone evaluating a high-risk investment. The first 5 years were good. Marissa was promoted from human resources to plant coordinator, then to operations manager. Her salary grew, her hours grew, and her dinners at home shrank. When she arrived, I already had the table set. Rice, beans, whatever was left over from the truck, or something I would cook separately. She would eat quickly, answer emails on her phone, and be asleep before 10. Marissa's mother, Mrs. Carmen Vargas, would visit from Laredo every 2 months. She would stay for 3 days, sleeping in the guest room that I had painted sky blue because she said the original white felt like a hospital. Each visit included the same ritual. Mrs. Carmen Vargas would sit in the kitchen, accept the coffee I served her, and find an elegant way to remind me that her daughter deserved more. She did not say it in those words. She said it with questions. Have you thought about setting up a more formal business, Gabe? Would not you like to study something? Have you considered getting a corporate job, something with benefits? Each question was a brick, carefully placed in a wall separating me from her idea of an acceptable son-in-law. I would serve her more coffee, answer calmly, and continue cutting oranges from the backyard for the morning juice. One Saturday morning in November, Mrs. Carmen Vargas found me alone in the kitchen. Marissa was still asleep. She looked at me with the expression of someone about to say something she had rehearsed. Gabe, she said, my daughter is on her way up. She is growing in her career. You love her, I know that. But affection does not pay for tuition or trips. She needs someone who is at her level. I placed a glass of orange juice on the table. With all due respect, Mrs. Carmen Vargas, I told her, level can be measured in many ways. She drank the juice without replying. But the look she gave me was the same one a customs inspector would give a suspicious package. Our daughter, Rosa, was born in March 2016. I named her Rosa after my grandmother, the original owner of the house. Marissa wanted to name her Regina, but I won that negotiation. It was the last one I would win for a long while. Rosa grew up between two worlds, her mother's, which smelled of imported perfume and air-conditioned offices, and mine, which smelled of cilantro, charcoal, and the backyard's orange trees. On Saturdays, I would take her to the taco truck and seat her on a high stool behind the counter. I taught her to count using the order tickets. At 4, she could add by fives better than any kid in her kindergarten. At 6, she helped me take payments, giving customers their change with a seriousness that was comical. The customers adored her. They called her the little taco boss. She would stand up straight behind the cash box in an apron that reached her ankles and say, "I am the manager." Marissa never came to the taco truck on Saturdays. She said she hated the smell of grease in her hair. I did not insist. Starting in 2019, Marissa began referring to me in the third person when she was on the phone. My husband, the one with the tacos. She said it with no apparent malice, as an informational detail. But something in the way she pronounced it reminded me of how people talk about their pets. With affection, yes, but with the certainty that the cat is not going to talk back. She never asked me for money, but she stopped asking how much I earned. And that absence of a question was more eloquent than any complaint. What Marissa did not know, what no one knew except Alfuentes and my accountant. A 62-year-old man named Manny Torres, whose office is above a shoe store on a downtown street, was that Gabe's Tacos was the tip of something considerably larger. It started in 2015, a year after we got married. A colleague from the local market, Charlie Mendoza, had a taco cart on wheels that he was closing down. He sold it to me for $2,000. I cleaned it up one weekend, hired one of Alfuentes' cousins to run it, and set it up in the north side. In 6 months, it was turning a profit. Not a lot, but enough to buy another one. By 2018, I had 4 mobile food trucks, the original Gabe's Tacos, plus 3 food trucks spread across the north side, the east side, and the west side. Each operated under a different name, not for secrecy, but because each neighborhood had its own crowd and personality. The one in the north side was called North Side Flame, the one in the east side was Spinning Pit, and the one in the west side, Prime Charcoal. None of them had my name, none of them needed it. Managing 4 units from a taco truck in Harlandale required a system. Not software, not apps, nothing like that. A hardcover notebook I bought at the corner stationery store for $2. Each page was a unit, each line was a day. Revenue, expenses, waste, observations. I filled it out by hand every night after closing, sitting on the same stool where Rosa counted tickets on Saturdays. Alfuentes used to say I was the only entrepreneur in San Antonio who did his accounting with a BIC pen and a graph paper notebook. There was a moment in 2017 when I almost let it all go. A guy who owned a chain of rotisserie chicken joints in the northern part of the city offered to buy my 3 trucks for a price that sounded good. He invited me to lunch at a restaurant in the medical center area. One of those places with cloth tablecloths and waiters who pull out your chair for you. He explained his business model with a presentation on his iPad, charts, projections, growth percentages. All very nice, very clean. Very much the work of people who do not get up at 4 in the morning to assemble a marinated pork spit. I told him no. He asked me why. Because this is not a business to me, I said. It is a trade. And you do not sell trades, you pass them down. I left the restaurant and went straight to my taco truck. That night, I cleaned the griddle for 40 minutes, much longer than necessary. But I needed to keep my hands busy so my head would stop running the numbers. Manny suggested I create a legal entity. I took his advice. We registered Navarro Food Services, LLC, in 2019. By 2020, the company had 7 mobile units and a brick-and-mortar location in Alamo Heights that was only open on weekends. The Alamo Heights spot was Alfuentes' idea. He told me, people in Alamo Heights will pay triple for the same thing if you give them nice placemats and a sign that says artisanal. He was right. In late 2020, with the pandemic hitting the cafeteria services at the manufacturing plants, an acquaintance of Manny's connected me with the owner of an industrial building in the Southeast Industrial Park who was looking to sell. The building was half empty. 3 warehouses. 1 occupied by an electrical wiring assembly plant and 2 vacant. The owner wanted out before he lost any more months of rent. I remember the day I went to see the building. It was a Thursday in August, 108 degrees Fahrenheit. The asphalt in the industrial park shimmered like a mirror from the heat. The building stood on a wide, dusty avenue, with a parking lot full of potholes and a perimeter fence that had not seen a coat of paint in decades. But the warehouses were well built. High ceilings, good ventilation, polished concrete floors. I walked into the main warehouse where the assembly plant operated and saw about 50 workers assembling components under neon lights. The noise of the machinery reminded me of the sound of my taco truck's exhaust fan, multiplied by 100. I thought, this place produces, and what it produces pays the bills. On the way out, I told Al Fuentes, who had come with me in his pickup, we are buying it. Al Fuentes wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and said, buddy, you keep taking me to see bigger and bigger things. I bought the building through Navarro Food Services for a price Manny described as obscenely cheap. I made Al Fuentes the legal representative for tenant negotiations. The tenant in the main warehouse, the electrical wiring assembly plant, renewed their lease for 5 years without asking any questions about the new owner. The electrical wiring assembly plant was Monarch Manufacturing, the company where Marissa was the operations manager. I did not plan it. I swear on my grandmother Rosa and on the orange trees in her backyard. It was a coincidence. The kind of coincidence that seems like fiction but happens more often than you would think in San Antonio, where everyone is connected by 3 degrees of separation. I asked Manny if there was any conflict of interest. He scratched his head, took off his glasses, cleaned them with his tie, and told me, legally, you own a building and your wife is an employee of a company that rents a warehouse from you. There is no conflict. There is just irony. When it hit me, I found myself sitting at my taco truck. Cleaning the griddle at 11 p.m. Al Fuentes was across from me, eating a tripe taco. I told him what I had just discovered. He was quiet for a moment, the taco halfway to his mouth. Then, chewing, he said, well, what can I tell you? Buddy, life has one heck of a twisted sense of humor. I did not tell Marissa, not because I wanted to hide it, but because there was no reason to say anything. I was the owner of the building. She was an employee of a company that paid me rent. Those 2 facts existed on parallel planes that did not intersect, at least not yet. By 2022, Navarro Food Services had 12 mobile units, 2 brick-and-mortar locations, and the building in the Southeast Industrial Park. Manny ran the numbers one Friday in December while eating tamales in his office above the shoe store. He looked at me, took off his glasses, cleaned them with his tie, and put them back on. Gabe, he said, your net worth is $1,400,000. Then he took a bite of his tamale and added with his mouth full, not bad for a taco guy. I kept going to the taco truck at 4 in the morning. I kept chopping the cilantro, building the marinated pork spit, cleaning the griddle. Not because I had to, I had people for that, but because that spit turning in front of the charcoal was the most honest thing I knew. The meat does not lie to you. The fire does not pretend. People come, eat, pay, and leave. No contracts, no performance reviews, no one introducing you as the one with the tacos. Marissa was promoted to Director of Operations at Monarch Manufacturing in March 2023. She came home with a bottle of wine that cost more than I charged for a large taco order. We toasted. She told me she was now earning $6,000 a month, plus bonuses. She looked at me, waiting for something. Admiration, maybe. Surprise. What she got was a "that is great, Marissa, you deserve it," and me washing the dishes. I do not know exactly when she stopped respecting me. It was not a single moment. It was an erosion. Like the San Antonio River when it carries water slow, constant, invisible, until one day you look and the bridge no longer has a bank beneath it. In August 2023, we went to a dinner with people from her work at a restaurant in Alamo Heights. One of those places where the menu has no prices and the waiters talk as if they are narrating a documentary. A guy in a suit, a director of something or other, asked me what I did for a living. Before I could open my mouth, Marissa answered, He has a little taco truck in Harlandale. He has his loyal clientele. The table laughed politely. Of course. Polite laughter is worse than mockery because it is wrapped in courtesy, and you cannot confront it. I smiled, ate my steak, said nothing, but I filed that phrase away. A little truck. Small operation, with the diminutive and everything. 2 months later, there was a Christmas party at her direct boss's house. A guy who lived in a large home in Stone Oak with a garden bigger than the entire Harlandale neighborhood. Marissa asked me not to wear my boots. She asked me to wear dress shoes. She asked me not to talk about tacos. She basically asked me not to be me. I went in the dress shoes. I did not talk about tacos. I sat on a leather sofa next to a small table with appetizers that cost what one of my customers spends in a week of dinners. A blonde woman, who turned out to be the wife of a finance director, asked if I was also with Monarch Manufacturing. No, I told her. I have a food business. How interesting, she said. With the tone people use when they are not interested at all, but were raised to be polite. Marissa appeared at my side just then, put her arm around the blonde woman's back, and said, Gabe has his taco business. It is like his hobby, but he does well with it. Hobby. The word bounced around in my head like a ball against a stone wall. 11 years of work, for in the morning every day. $1,550,000 in a folder she did not know existed, and my wife had just called it a hobby. The blonde woman smiled. I smiled. Everyone smiled. Christmas music continued to play from the garden speakers. I poured myself another whiskey and thought about the marinated pork spit. Spinning alone in the darkness of my closed taco truck, 15 miles from that home. Waiting for me, as always, at 4 in the morning. The yellow envelope arrived on February 14th, 2024. I think Marissa chose that date on purpose. I suspect that in her mind, it was a gesture of radical honesty. Love is not at odds with financial intelligence. She must have thought something like that. The envelope contained a draft for a post-nuptial agreement for separation of assets prepared by a law firm from Alamo Heights. 8 pages. Thick paper, elegant font, the kind of document that smells like money before you even open it. I read it at the dining room table while Rosa did her homework in the living room. The terms were clear. Each party keeps their own assets. Assets acquired during the marriage would be divided according to verifiable contributions. In the section for spouse B's assets, which was me, it said, prepared food business. Estimated value pending verification. 1 taco truck. That was me on paper. A taco truck with its value pending verification. I did not get angry. I clarify that because people always expect me to say I got angry. No, what I felt was something more useful than anger. It was the same feeling I get when the charcoal reaches the perfect point. When the embers no longer have flames, but radiate an even heat that you cannot see but can feel. Thermal clarity, if such a thing exists. I signed the draft that same night. Marissa did not expect that. She looked at me, bewildered. Do not you want your lawyer to review it? She asked. I do not have a lawyer, I said. I signed with the same pen I used to write down orders at the taco truck, a blue Bic with a chewed-up cap. The next day, I called Manny. I told him I needed him to prepare something. He asked what kind of something. The kind that carries weight, I told him. Lots of paper, lots of numbers, lots of signatures. I want it all together, I want it clean, and I want it ready in 3 weeks. Manny finished his coffee, cleaned his glasses with his tie, and said, Gabe, I have been waiting for this call for 2 years. Manny worked for 17 days. He called me every 3rd day to confirm figures, request copies of contracts, and verify registration dates. The shoe store downstairs closed at 8, and Manny would stay until 11. The light from his desk lamp, the only illuminated window on the entire downtown block. His wife, Mrs. Rosa Fuentes, would send him dinner through DoorDash. Because she knew that when Manny was working on something big, he would not even come down to buy water. On the 14th day, he summoned me to his office. I walked up the stairs, which smelled of shoe glue and new leather. Manny had all the pages of the file spread out on his desk, organized in little stacks with colored paper clips. He looked like a general reviewing a battle map. Gabe, he said without looking up, there is something you should know before you sign this. I sat in the visitor's chair. A plastic one with a faded yellow cushion that has been there as long as I have known him. Tell me, I said. Your assets have grown more than we calculated last year. The lease agreements for the 2 vacant warehouses in the Southeast Industrial Park that you rented out in January changed the numbers. He took off his glasses, cleaned them with his tie, and looked me straight in the eye. Something Manny only does when the figure is important. $1,550,000, he said. I remained silent, not because the figure surprised me, but because hearing it said aloud by another person gave it a different weight. It was like hearing your own name shouted in a place where no one knows you. He handed me the 41-page file in an unlabeled black folder. I read it at the taco truck at 5 in the morning, before the first customer arrived. The first ray of sun came through the half-open metal shutter, giving the pages an orange hue, as if the San Antonio sunrise were co-signing every sheet with me. Each page was a mirror. It reflected 11 years of silent work, of early mornings, of decisions I made while the rest of the world slept. Navarro Food Services, LLC. 12 mobile units with their city permits. 2 brick-and-mortar locations. 1 industrial building in the Southeast Industrial Park with 3 warehouses. Active lease agreements. Audited financial statements. Updated net worth, $1,550,000. Manny included a handwritten note at the end in his doctor-like script. This does not include the appreciation of the Southeast Industrial Parkland, which is in a development zone and has increased 40% in 2 years. I asked him to send a copy to Marissa's law firm. No cover letter, no explanation, no context. Just the black folder with the Navarro Food Services logo and the name of the legal representative, Alfuentes. The call came 4 days later. Not to me, to Manny. Marissa's lead attorney, Mr. Alexander Delgado, called the office above the shoe store and asked to speak with Mr. Navarro's representative. Manny told me the conversation lasted 9 minutes. That Mr. Alexander Delgado spoke with the voice of someone who had just discovered the map he had been using was upside down. Mr. Torres, the lawyer said, my client's assets are considerably greater than what is stated in the signed agreement. I know, said Manny, finishing his coffee. The agreement states that each party keeps their own assets. Exactly, said Manny. What is hers is a taco truck. What my client's is what is in that folder. Silence. 9 seconds of silence that Manny counted, because he is the kind of person who counts silences. Then the lawyer said that his client wished to renegotiate the terms. Manny leaned back in his chair. The chair squeaked the same way it has for 15 years. Your client drafted the terms. Counselor, my client signed them in good faith. There is nothing to renegotiate. Marissa came home that night at 7. She never came home at 7. Rosa was at a friend's house. The house smelled of the backyard's orange trees because it had rained that afternoon. And when it rains in San Antonio after months of drought, the entire city smells of wet earth and fruit. I was sitting in the kitchen with a plate of pinto beans and a freshly made flour tortilla. I saw her walk in. She was holding the black folder. The night before, I had not slept. I sat in the living room with the TV off, the light from the backyard filtering through the window. I thought about what was going to happen. I thought about how there are 2 kinds of silence. The one that hides weakness, and the one that hides patience. Mine had been the second kind for 11 years, and it was about to end. I thought of my grandfather, who bought this house with his factory worker's salary and never asked anyone to recognize what he was worth. I thought about how I did not want recognition. I wanted something simpler. I wanted my wife to stop treating me like a fun fact in her professional biography. The crickets chirped outside. The kitchen clock read 2:15. I got up, made myself some coffee on the stove, and sat down to wait for the sunrise. Like someone waiting for the charcoal to reach its perfect point. When Marissa walked in that evening, her eyes were dry but red-rimmed. Like someone who had cried hours ago and put on makeup to cover it. She sat across from me, placing the folder on the table between my plate and the salt shaker. I looked at it, then at her. Navarro Food Services, she said. Yes, I replied. 12 food trucks. Yes. 2 locations. Yes. The building in the Southeast Industrial Park. Yes. Where I work. Yes. A long silence. Outside, a dog barked down the street. The next-door neighbor was listening to the Spurs game on the radio. The rain had stopped, but the backyard was still dripping. "Since when?" she asked. "Since 2015, I said. "A year after we got married." I said no more. I did not need to. The 41 pages said everything I had kept quiet for 11 years. Every invoice, every contract. Every 4 in the morning chopping cilantro while the rest of the world slept and believed that Gabe Navarro was just a man with a little truck in Harlandale. "Why did not you tell me?" Marissa said. Her voice did not tremble. It was rather flat. The same tone she used in meetings when a supplier failed her and she needed a moment before deciding whether to replace them or give them another chance. "You never asked," I said. That stopped her. I saw her process the sentence. I saw her mentally scan 11 years of conversations, dinners, Sundays in the backyard, searching for a single moment when she had asked me how much I earned, how much I had, what my work was worth. And she could not find it because it did not exist. "You introduce me as the one with the tacos," I said. "At dinners, at gatherings, in front of your bosses. A little truck." With the diminutive. I heard it every time, and every time. I went back to the taco truck at 4 in the morning and continued building what you did not believe existed. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The black folder spoke louder than any shout. 41 pages of silence converted into assets. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. She reminded me of the first time I saw her at the gas station, watching me change her tire with her arms crossed, assessing if I knew what I was doing. 11 years later, she was still assessing me. Only now the assessment yielded a result she did not expect. "Can I challenge the agreement?" she asked, without conviction. Like someone mentioning an option they know is impossible. "Your lawyers drafted it," I said. "You signed it first." "I signed exactly what you wanted. Each party keeps their own assets, according to your document. What is mine is my grandfather's house and a taco truck. What is truly mine is what is in that folder." I paused. "Your lawyers wrote, value pending verification." Well, there you have it. Verified. 41 pages of verification. Marissa sat there for a long time. She did not cry. She did not scream. I will give her credit for that. She looked at the folder as if it were a mirror showing her a version of reality that had always been there, but that she had chosen not to see. After 15 minutes, she said something I did not expect. She said, "The building where I work is yours." I nodded. "I am your tenant," she said. "Technically, Monarch Manufacturing is my tenant," I corrected her. "But yes." She stood up, walked to the kitchen window overlooking the backyard, and looked at the orange trees. The rain had washed their leaves, and they shone under the backyard light, green and wet. With those ugly but sweet oranges hanging like ornaments placed by someone who does not know how to decorate, but certainly knows how to cultivate. When she turned back, she had an expression I had never seen on her. It was not defeat, it was recognition. Like when you arrive at a place you thought you knew and discover it has a basement level you never saw. "I underestimated you," she said. I nodded again. "Yes," I said. "You did." Silence. Then I served her a plate of pinto beans and pushed a tortilla toward her. She ate slowly, in silence, without her phone in her hand for the first time in years. That night, I washed the dishes, and she remained seated in the kitchen, staring at the closed black folder on the table without opening it again, as if she already knew its contents by heart. The post-nuptial agreement papers remained just as Marissa had drafted them. Her law firm tried to challenge them twice. But the document had been signed voluntarily by both parties before a notary, and the terms were those established by her side. There was no changing it. I did not get a divorce. That surprises people when I tell them. Not because I forgave her. That is too clean a word for what happened. It was more because Rosa was 8 years old, and because I believed, and still believe, that buildings do not collapse because of one crack. They collapse when no one repairs the crack in time. I told Marissa we had 2 options. The first was to separate and divide our time with Rosa between Pinto Beans and Alamo Heights restaurants with no prices on the menu. The second was to rebuild, but with all the cards on the table. All of them. No little trucks, no diminutives, no dinners where I was the fun fact in someone else's biography. She chose the second option. I do not know if it was out of conviction or calculation, and I do not care which, because the result is the same. Now she knows exactly who I am, and that changes everything. Mrs. Carmen Vargas found out a month later. Not from me, but from Marissa, who called her on a Sunday afternoon and told her everything. I was in the backyard watering the orange trees when Marissa came out with the phone in her hand and held it out to me. "My mom wants to talk to you," she said. I took the phone with my wet hands. "Gabe," said Mrs. Carmen Vargas. "Ma'am," I replied. Silence. A long, humid silence that crossed the 160 miles between San Antonio and Laredo like a heat wave. "Forgive me," she said. Her voice trembled. It was the first time in 11 years I had heard Mrs. Carmen Vargas's voice tremble. "There is nothing to forgive, Mrs.," I said. "But there is something to learn. You do not measure people by the apron they wear." She hung up without another word. Marissa watched me from the kitchen doorway. I did not ask what her mother had said to her. I did not need to. Rosa took it the best. I told her one Saturday at the taco truck while she was helping me stack napkins in the dispensers. I did not tell her the numbers. I just told her that Dad had more businesses than Mom knew about. She thought for a moment, a napkin folded in half in her hand, and then asked, "So, am I the manager?" I laughed and hugged her. I told her yes, she had always been the manager. She just needed a few more years before I could give her the title officially. The following Saturday, Marissa came to the taco truck for the first time in years. She sat on the plastic stool next to Rosa. She ordered 3 marinated pork tacos with everything and did not care that she stained her blouse. It reminded me of the beginning of the gas station, the green salsa, the laugh that was not polite but real. I do not know if it will last. I do not know if we are going to be okay. But for the first time in a long time, my wife smelled like cilantro at the end of the day, and she did not complain. Alfuentes bought me a few beers last week at the truck. After we closed, we sat on the plastic stools under the awning. The smell of charcoal still in the air and the sounds of Harlandale fading like an old radio. The metal shutter was halfway down, the Gabe's Tacos sign flickering. The G about to burn out like it does every 3 months. The same old sign, the same old truck, only now. Behind that sign were 41 pages that said something else. He asked me if I was happy. I took a long sip of my Bud Light, the kind that tastes best after a long shift, with beads of condensation on the glass that wet your fingers. I told him happy was not the word. "At peace," I said. "I am at peace. In a way I have not been for a long time. As if someone turned off a background noise that had been on for years, a noise I had stopped even noticing." "Peaceful like your charcoal," Alfuentes said. "Exactly," I told him. "No flame, but hot." Sometimes I think Marissa's mistake was not underestimating me. It was confusing what was visible with what was real. She saw an apron, a griddle, and a plastic stool, and she thought that was the whole story. It never occurred to her that behind a marinated pork spit turning at 4 in the morning, there could be something bigger than her office with a view of the parking lot. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.